When things go wrong as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must but do not ever quit. Success is a failure turned inside out. Let's talk and clear the clouds of doubt.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Peace. Welcome to Let's Talk. I'm your moderator, Omar Dunlap, and today we will be discussing the topic of answering tough questions. Whether those questions come from our mind or from non-Muslims, wherever they come from, today's that's the topic. And we have with us, of course, Sheikh Haytham al-Haddad. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Welcome to the show. And we have with us our studio audience. Assalamu alaikum. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our beloved Sheikh for his 10-minute reflections.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen nabiyina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man tabi'ahu bi ihsanin ila yawmiddin. At this time and age, I think this topic takes a central position in Muslims' life. How to answer tough questions. Let me pinpoint key issues regarding how to deal with these tough questions or how to answer tough questions. First of all, we have to realize that life is a test. Allah Jalla wa Ala created this life as a test. And there are a number of ayat that talk about this. تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم. The one who created life and death in order to test you. So the whole purpose is to test mankind. لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. So this is one thing. Which means that we should expect tough questions from different people. And not only that, we ourselves, we should expect that our minds create or generate some tough questions. And some of those questions might put us in a state of confusion in order to see whether we are going to investigate more to see whether we can come up with an answer that pleases Allah Jalla wa Ala. This is one thing. The other point is, brothers and sisters, whenever you are facing a question, don't ever put yourself in a defensive position. This is very dangerous. And I think the problem now is many Muslims are suffering from inferiority complex because of the dominance of the West, because of the dominance of the un-Islamic system over Muslims. So many Muslims accept this defensive position. If we look at the Quran, let us read Quran carefully and let us try to understand how Allah Jalla wa Ala tried to address some of the questions were posed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ. This is an example. Allah Jalla wa Ala gave us the other example. أَمْ يَقُولُونَ افْتَرَاهُ. This is a tough question. Allah Jalla wa Ala said that they claim that you produced this book. أَمْ يَقُولُونَ افْتَرَاهُ. Then what was the result? What was the answer? The answer is قُلْ فَأْتُوا بِعَشْرِ سُوَرٍ مِثْلِهِ. It is a challenge. Allah Jalla wa Ala said to them, okay, if you claim that the Quran was produced by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, O Muhammad, don't put yourself in a defensive position and say, no, I'm not the one. No, okay, produce 10 surah of like this Quran. Of course, they will fail. Once they fail, they will realize the answer of this question. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ. This is another example. It was a tough question addressed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How Allah Jalla wa Ala addressed this? قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. First of all, the Prophet ﷺ kept quiet, and we know the story when a group of Jews asked the Prophet ﷺ certain questions in Surah, and then Surah Al-Kahf was revealed. يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. If you don't know the answer, don't try to create an answer that might not be in according to Quran and Sunnah. First of all, the Prophet ﷺ was waiting for the wahi. So you don't need to answer every tough question. This is one thing. The other thing, you might say that this matter belongs to Allah Jalla wa Ala. Even in this ayah, Allah Jalla wa Ala encouraged the Prophet ﷺ in an indirect way not to accept a defensive position. He said, وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. You did not get enough knowledge. All of us did get what? Little knowledge. This is a challenge for them, and it was the habit of the Prophet ﷺ to take this matter over and he used to teach his companions not to be inferior, not to always take a defensive position or use apologetic language. And the story of Khabbab ibn al-Arat, when he came to the Prophet ﷺ complaining about the torture the people of Mecca used to exercise against the Sahaba, and how the Prophet ﷺ responded to them, is well known. Another point is, sometimes when you receive a question, you immediately think of the answer. That is wrong. You have to understand the question, and in many cases it is good to criticize the question before thinking of the answer. Let me give you an example. A very tough question that many Muslims are facing is, okay, Allah Jalla wa Ala created this. You claim, they say, you Muslims claim that Allah Jalla wa Ala created you, Allah Jalla wa Ala created heavens, Allah Jalla wa Ala created so and so. Who created Allah? And many Muslims are trying to struggle to find answer here or there. But we say to the people that the question itself is wrong. So if you accept to answer the question, you accepted to answer a wrong question. So whatever answer you gave is wrong, because the question itself is wrong. That's why try to critically think of the question, and sometimes criticize the question before providing an answer. Sometimes, another point is related to this point, another example. A person came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, when is the hour? The time of resurrection, when is it going to be? Now the Prophet ﷺ said, he gave an answer. In one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, مَا الْمَسْئُولُ عَنْهَا بِأَعْلَمَ مِنَ السَّائِلِ, means, you don't know, I don't know. As simple as that. So the Prophet ﷺ had the courage to say, you don't know, I don't know. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, what did you prepare for it? What did you prepare for it? Means, guide the person who is asking you the question, guide him to something fruitful, rather than answering a question that might not be useful for him, that might not be useful for the other audience. I remember a young person asked me a question. He said, okay, I accept that Allah is the creator, I accept that Allah created us as a test, but what I don't understand is why Allah Jalla wa Ala created us suffering from all these tests, trials and tribulations. I cannot understand that. I said to him, okay brother, whatever answer I give you, will it change the matter that you have been created and you are going to be tested? He said, what do you mean by that? I said, any answer provided to you, you are still created, I am still created, I am here, I am a living person, and I will be tested, and I will go to either Jannah or Nar. So for me, the key question is not why Allah Jalla wa Ala put us in this situation. The key question is what? How do we pass the test? Not why the test was there. How to pass the test. So sometimes you need to guide people to what? The fruitful question, rather than being involved in an unfruitful question. Now, another point about answering tough questions. Now, many non-Muslims ask Muslims certain tough questions. The very famous example is your Prophet. You claim that he is the most honorable person, he was a very good person, etc. He got married to 13 women. And at one point he had 9 wives.
At the same time.
At the same time. Yeah, 9 wives. And in another question, the other famous question, your Prophet got married to a child. Yeah? 9 years of age. Even in your Sahih, in your Sahih al-Bukhari, he got married to Aisha when she was 6 years of age. And you know, this is a very common question. Now, immediately we try to what? Take, first of all, a defensive position, and try to find other answers that they might be pleased with. why don't we think the other way around? The very productive way. Okay, you are asking this question. I understand your concern. Is this the main concern regarding Islam you have? So if he said, what do you mean? Do you accept that the Lord, Allah, is the creator? He will say, no, of course I don't. Do you accept that Muhammad, that man who lived 1400 years, he was a prophet sent by God? Of course. He will say, no, of course I don't accept that. So, okay, so these are tough questions. And in order to answer your question, in order to address this question, we need to answer those two questions first. Who is Allah? Who is Muhammad? Was Muhammad a prophet? Was he sent by Allah? Because see, if you accept that Allah is the Lord, and Muhammad is the final prophet, and he was sent by Allah, then ultimately you will accept that Muhammad will not make mistakes, because Allah is monitoring him. And if he committed such a bad thing, then Allah Jalla wa Ala, the creator who sent him, will correct him, and he will not accept this. So this is another point. Of course, we don't have time or more time to address other issues, other key points when we answer tough questions. But I think these points, once we put them in mind, inshallah, we will be able to deal with any tough question.
Very well. Well, we're going to take a quick break, so don't go anywhere. You're watching Let's Talk.
Earth, the human heart, greed, exploitation, hatred, all diseases of the heart. For the cure, join Huda TV every Sunday at 20 GMT for Moments for the Heart.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back to Let's Talk. I'm your moderator, Omar Dunlap. And today we're discussing answering tough questions. And we have with us, of course, Sheikh Haytham Al-Haddad, who's the director of the Muslim Research and Development Foundation, which is... What is that organization again? If you can, what is its purpose? What is it doing?
The purpose, mainly two things. First of all, to develop young leaders, young Muslim leaders in the West and for the West. And the second thing is to provide solutions for Muslims living in the West.
Very well. So now we have a clarification on exactly what that organization does. And I think they should have maybe the website or the email for that.
The website should be displayed
on the screen. On the screen.
Anyway, it is www.21c.com. 21c stands for 21st century.
Oh, very good. Okay, so you can email, our viewers can email if they have more questions. But in this segment, we're going to take a look at some questions that we've previously asked some of our fellow Muslims, dealing with the topic of answering tough questions. The question that we asked them is, what are some tough questions that you have been asked? And so we're going to take a look at their answers.
One of my friends, he asked me about polygamy. The question is about polygamy. He asked me about polygamy according to Islamic perspective. Then I told him that Islam gives the right or the chance for a man to marry one wife, more than one wife. You can marry one or two or three or four wives, because Islam permits us to marry more than one or two wives. Then he tried to dispute this view and this idea, and I tried to convince him in order to understand more about Islamic issues. Then I quoted some verses from the Holy Quran and some sayings of the Prophet. I mean Prophet Muhammad. And after convincing my friend, he admitted and he followed my way, and he followed the Islamic way. That's all about it.
Okay, that was a very interesting answer to that particularly tough question that I think we all get from time to time. Sheikh Haytham, what was your thought on what he said?
Yeah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I don't think that he answered the question. But anyway, sometimes, brothers and sisters, we have to be careful. Sometimes some people ask tough questions, and we try to convince them. The brother said that I try to convince him. Not necessarily to try to convince him. Some people might ask just questions for the sake of asking questions, or for the sake of created maybe doubts in the person's mind or in the audience mind. And that's why you have to, and this is one of the points that I wanted to mention in the beginning of this episode, that it is good to understand the motivation of the person who is asking the question. Is he a sincere, or she a sincere person, and he or she would like to maybe a clarification for this point, or are they just asking for the sake of asking? Do they want to create confusion among the audience? So based on this motivation, you can maybe tailor your question, your answer, to suit that need. In some cases, you don't need to convince the person, because at the end of the day, he's not going to be convinced. So don't waste your time. And why? The other point is, when you try to convince him and he's not convinced, sometimes you might adopt apologetic language or apologetic answer in order to convince him. So you will be changing the Islamic teachings in order to convince a person. If he doesn't want to be convinced, it is up to him. And we gave some examples when a group of Jews asked the Prophet ﷺ about al-ruh, the soul. The Prophet ﷺ in the beginning, he didn't know the answer. He said, I don't know. Wait until revelation comes from me. And when revelation came, the Prophet ﷺ even told them that it belongs to Allah. I don't have an answer for it. So, and you won't be able to understand an answer for it. So this is something to be in mind.
Very well. Maybe since you said that he didn't really answer the question, how would you have answered it differently? Just for argument's sake. Yeah,
okay. If we say that you are a sincere person and asking about this, we mentioned that sometimes it is good not to answer the question, but to challenge either the question or to challenge maybe the person's life or lifestyle or values. Let us take this issue of polygamy. In the West, polygamy is practiced in a very, you can say, in a very bad way. So if they think that Islam is practicing this in a bad way, in fact they are practicing it in a worst way. How? According to statistics, in Britain, by the age of 40, on average, a black person had a relationship or 9 partners, 9 life partners. The white person had 6 life partners. The Indo person or the Indian person had 2 life partners, and the Pakistani, of course, this is statistics, or this survey is not built on religion, because it's difficult to identify that. A Pakistani person who is likely Muslim, he had 1 partner. So they are practicing it in reality. And the second point is that those people who have partners, they are not giving them any right. From an Islamic perspective, you can get married and to 2, 3, 4, but you have to what? To give them their due rights. So it is even an organized way. The other thing, if someone were to say, if I want to challenge even, someone were to say polygamy in Islam, and please, because we have our audience here, and for the brothers and sisters, sometimes we immediately jump into an answer thinking that this person, he is asking the question that we have heard before. Sometimes the person is asking a question, he is just asking it, he never thought of it. So, polygamy, yes, what do you want to know about polygamy? So he would say, why Islam allowed polygamy? So why don't we say, why Islam shouldn't allow polygamy? And instead of putting ourselves in the defensive mode, why don't you think that Islam allowed polygamy? Believe me, in some cases he would say, what do you mean? No, what do you mean? You are asking me a question. And then he might not have an answer. He might not know what he's asking about, what he's talking about. Polygamy is injustice. Why is it injustice? Then he will be stuck, believe me. Or he will say, why men were not allowed to marry, women were allowed to marry for women. He might come, the clever person might come up with this. So now we need to deal with this rather than thinking that he meant something else and start going into that without dealing with this issue that he had in mind.
Right. Well, I think at this point we'll take it to our audience and see if they have any questions. Go ahead, brother.
Sheikh Haitham, most of our questions we are asked are so difficult and deep, and most of us are not scholars, so we may face problems in answering such questions. So we need a solution from you.
Yeah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, the points that we have mentioned, please always remember them. And I remember I gave a course about answering tough questions. And the first point that I mentioned is you have to feel confident that Islam is the ultimate truth. Even if you don't know the answer, don't doubt your Islam. Never doubt your Islam. Islam is the ultimate truth. It is the religion of Allah Jalla wa Ala. It is the way of life that came from who? From the one who created everything. أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ وَهُوَ اللطيف الخبير. Okay, he is the one who is acquainted with everything. So this is one point. The other point is true that you are not a scholar, but sometimes you need to think out of the box. As we said, don't limit yourself to the question, just think out of the question a little bit. Try to understand the motivation, try to sometimes to criticize the question itself. Just by simple rational process of thinking, you will come up with a conclusion that in many questions, these questions are wrong, or they are practiced in non-Muslim communities or societies worse than they are practiced in Islam. If according to their value. Otherwise, we don't think that from an Islamic perspective it is bad. So like polygamy, like the example of polygamy. And so don't think that, this question is really deep and I don't really understand, I don't have an answer for it and now I am confused. No, be very careful. Like I gave the example of polygamy. When people say, polygamy, then just ask simple questions. If you are stuck, then like the example we gave about the Prophet ﷺ, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ, the Prophet ﷺ said, قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي, I don't know the answer, I can come back to you. And that might be a chance for you to go and study more. And life is like this.
I would like to add a bit of practical advice to add on to what he was saying. In line with what you were saying about maybe the question is wrong, right? This is called a logical fallacy. If the question is wrong, it's called an informal fallacy. And there are books written on this. They list them all. They tell you what are all the informal fallacies, what are their names, what do they look like. And you can read a book. Non-Muslims have written about it. And there's one book I'll even suggest that I read, and it really helped me in my dialogue with non-Muslims. And it's called With Good Reason. And the author's name is Dr. Engels, E-N-G-E-L-S, and he lists all of the informal fallacies so that you'll be able to recognize if someone's asking you a wrong question. And one of the examples that I give from the book is, he said that there's a fallacy known as the fallacy of composition. And he said that the fallacy of composition is when someone tells you that's what is true of one individual is true of all. So he said, for example, if someone says, look, I can break this stick over my knee, And he says, so I can break 10 sticks over my knee. Is that true or false? It's false, because just because you can break one doesn't mean if you have 10, you can break them all, right? Now how this applies to Islam. Someone says, this Muslim is a terrorist, so Muslims are terrorists. It's the same thing. It's the fallacy of composition. Just to give you one example. So just study fallacies. This is one. Go ahead, brother.
Sheikh Haytham, I have a Christian neighbor that he is asking me that the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him.
And he didn't say peace be upon the Prophet. This is from you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Described in many statements how the cases of the believers in paradise and the disbelievers in hellfire, and he's asking me how the Prophet Muhammad was alive and saw the believers in paradise and the disbelievers in hellfire. Yeah. And I try to convince him, but
yeah, okay. See, let us apply the same rulings, the key points that we mentioned. We can say to this person, is this the only problem with Islam you have? So if you know the answer, will you accept Islam immediately? He said, no. Yeah. So what stops you from accepting Islam? Why are you posing this question in particular? Okay? If he is really genuine, we can say there is a very simple story that the teacher challenged a young Muslim boy. He said, you believe in Allah and you never saw Allah. You never seen Allah. So how come you believe in Allah? So then a child did something related to love and hate. And he said, no, you love me, you hate me. And he said, where is it? How can you believe in love and hate and you cannot see it? So the teacher kept quiet. Very simple sometimes. Yeah. But again, please, brothers and okay, brothers. We have no sisters. Alhamdulillah.
We have viewers that are sisters.
We have, Al-Huda TV, alhamdulillah, they don't display sisters. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that be careful. Because sometimes you immediately want a convincing answer for the person. And as Allah Jalla wa Ala mentioned a number of times about some of the kuffar, وَإِن يَرَوْا كُلَّ آيَةٍ لَا يُؤْمِنُ بِهَا وَإِن يَرَوْا سَبِيلَ الرُّشْدِ لَا يَتَّخِذُوهُ سَبِيلًا وَإِن يَرَوْا سَبِيلَ الْغَيِّ يَتَّخِذُوهُ سَبِيلًا. Sometimes whatever you give them, they will not believe in it. And if they see the true path, they will not take it. But if they see the the false path, they will follow it. Yeah.
Okay, we have about 1 minute, so if we can get a quick question and we'll get a quick answer, inshallah. Go ahead.
Sheikh Haitham, you said that we must know the motivation of the person who's asking. Sometimes people's motivation is to show people that you are ignorant and you don't know many things about Islam. So he wanna embarrass you and embarrass your religion in front of people. So someone who's trying to be such an honor to Islam, he came up with a quick answer just to not embarrass Islam and to not to be such a disappointment to his religion.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's why we say, if you are not confident enough, not in Islam, but not confident enough in your ability to give quick answers, don't put yourself in a public platform where you need to answer Islam. Yeah. Maybe one-to-one, yes, but on a public platform is very dangerous. Avoid it.
Leave it to the expert.
Yeah, leave it to someone who has the
like Sheikh
expertise. No, I'm not. Astaghfirullah.
Okay.
No.
We're going to take a quick break right now, inshallah, and we'll be back, so don't go away. You're watching Let's Talk.
The true life of the Muslim starts at death. If you wish to enhance your knowledge of the Islamic perspective on the hereafter, this life doesn't go on forever, but we do so little to prepare for it because most of us don't know what happens after this life ends. If you want to be amongst those who know, then join us every Saturday at 1930 GMT for the inevitable journey.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back to Let's Talk. Today we're discussing answering tough questions. Those questions that we get from our mind or from non-Muslims or wherever it comes from. How to deal with those questions. And of course Sheikh Haytham al-Haddad has given us some very interesting insights into that. We have with us in this segment our guest, Brother Ali Rasul, who's been frequent with us. He's been on Let's Talk before and been on Huda TV several times. So welcome, brother. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
I think what I'll do is I'll ask you, how often, as you lived in America, surrounded by non-Muslims, you were Muslim there. How often did you get these tough questions that you had to go back and research, and how did you deal with that?
Well, quite often. I mean, they look for the toughest questions to ask us because they're looking to actually confuse the Muslims and hopefully get them to leave Islam. So when I first actually was challenged by such an event, there were Jehovah's Witnesses that used to come down my mother's street. And they used to knock on the door, ring the bells and everything. And most Christians would just avoid them. They don't want to be bothered by them.
Right.
So my mother, I was very young at the time, and she would say, don't answer the door, don't answer the door. Mind you, my mother is Christian.
Right.
So she's saying, don't answer the door, don't answer the door. And I was young in Islam. I didn't really know much about Islam. I was young in Islam. But I said to myself, why should we be scared of them? I mean, if we have the truth, then we should be able to defend the truth that we have.
Your mother was not Muslim at that time?
And she's still not Muslim.
She's still
May
not
Allah
Muslim.
guide her, inshallah.
Yeah, and in Britain we have the same thing, that the Jehovah's Witness, they just knock on the door and on the doors and ring the bells and they ask these difficult questions. I thought that this is unique for Britain, but so you have the same.
Right, so they're very aggressive,
Right.
And so I said, well, let them in. I mean, I have Islam, I understand it's the truth, so I should be able to defend the truth. So I opened the door and I let them come in, and that's when I realized I wasn't prepared, you see.
Right.
And I started really studying to be able to defend Islam and also to guide the people to Islam. So I had to work on both parts.
Right.
Now,
What is the toughest question that you ever faced by?
Well, it's hard for me to say what is the toughest because, alhamdulillah, by the permission of Allah, I've been able to tackle all of them. But it took some effort and some study. So I wrote down a few. Basically, the questions usually they fall into two groups. You have the offensive, where they're looking to attack.
Yeah.
And you have the defensive, where they're looking to defend their beliefs and their faith. And so both have their tough aspects to them. For instance, if we look at the offensive questions, as many people know, they're asking us, for instance, why do you Muslims have to marry more than one wife, And if you're not prepared, I mean, maybe you'll give the wrong answer, Some people will go on the, offensive, or on the defensive, depending on the individual and his level of knowledge or his confidence in his ability to answer the question. Someone might just say, no, well, we don't have to, or no, we don't, or no, it's just an exception. I mean, so anyway, the thing is, we should always realize when we're confronted by those who don't understand Islam, that our main objective is supposed to be tawheed, talking about the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this should be our foundation, because this is the main thing that will either put someone in the hellfire where they can't get out, or prevent them from entering paradise in either way. So this should be our focus, and not get sidetracked by these issues. Now, if a person has dealt with that, has dealt with the tawheed, then now we can start talking about these other issues, you see, because if you don't deal with the tawheed first, it may be just a matter of they're just looking to attack the Muslims, just looking to attack Islam, and they're not looking for guidance at all.
Now, when you say tawheed, we have a lot of non-Muslims, non-Arabic speakers viewing. What do you mean by tawheed?
Well, this is the purity of the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's nothing like it in any other way of life except Islam. Some people might say, yeah, we worship one God, But when you ask them, it's 3 in 1.
Or something.
You know, it's the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. Or it's that cow. He only worships that cow.
Right.
Or he only... Okay, one. No, Tawheed is different than just one. You know, it is the unity and the purity of the oneness and the uniqueness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He cannot
and to
be
worship Him and
Exactly.
no one beside Him. That
Exactly.
is the main principle
Exactly.
of Tawheed. As you believe that He is the Lord of the universe, then He is the only one to be worshipped.
Exactly.
So we should deal with that first.
Exactly. And
Before any of these other issues.
Exactly. This is like the point, Jazakallah khair for this. We mentioned that sometimes you don't need to answer the question, and sometimes you need to tell them, to ask them, is this the only problem with Islam you have? So, do you have a problem with the principle of Tawheed? Maybe you haven't used the word Tawheed, but do you have the principle that God is the only God? And then after the principle of Tawheed, the prophethood of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. From experience, unfortunately, many Muslims, they don't focus on this. And that's why most of their answers are very apologetic. Very, very apologetic.
Right.
I remember in a situation where some people asked me about the different shares for in inheritance law, in Islamic inheritance law for men and women. And I came to know, I gave the answer. I came to know that in the lecture, the next lecture, another lecturer was talking about Islam. He said that Muslim scholars now are looking for a reform in terms of the inheritance law, the Islamic inheritance law. See, to that level, some people, if they don't take people, as you said, Jazakallah khair, to the principle of Tawheed. And sometimes when we talk about Tawheed, we need to tell people that Allah is the source of everything. So in terms of legislations, Allah is the source of legislations. And not only that, Allah, because He is the creator, He is the most qualified one to what? To give legislation. Legislation means what? He is the one who entitled to be worshipped.
Now, Brother Ali, since you brought it up, the question, why do Muslim men have to marry 4 wives? I'm going to pretend that you're a non-Muslim and you just asked that question to Sheikh Haytham. What would be your answer?
Yeah, I will apply the same thing. I will say, what do you think? What's wrong with that?
First of all, is it a right question? Do we have to marry 4 wives, or just allowed?
No, it is allowed. It is allowed.
But not,
it is not
forced. Mandatory.
Yeah,
right?
not mandatory. Yeah.
Right.
But so if they said, why Islam allowed it? So I would say again, as I said before, why do you think that it shouldn't be allowed? Why?
Well, play devil's advocate.
I actually enjoy the angle of supporting it because I've been confronted with this a lot. And, you know, alhamdulillah, after speaking with non-Muslims about it, they agreed with me. And so, you know, I actually show that it's a cure to the ills of society. You see? Because you have women...
Yeah, see, to be honest with you, many of the questions that non-Muslims put just for hypothetical questions, just for the purpose of question or arguing. Otherwise, if you speak to them a little bit, they will be convinced.
Right.
I remember a Christian guy, even before I lived in the UK, he was a German person, 60-something, a project manager, and he said that he was married to 3 women. And he said, this is Christianity is horrible. He said that he is Christian, but he said that those clergy, they modified the Christianity and became horrible. He said, for example, he was describing himself as a strong person, and he lived in 3 different places because of his work. And one he had a lady, a German lady, another one a Philippine, another one from another country. And he said, this is a basic need for many men. You want to restrict them for 1 wife? That is not fair.
And it's not practical.
And it's not practical. He said, and he was not Christian. He was not Muslim. He was a Christian.
Right.
So, I mean, let us not take sometimes we overreact and we take some questions are serious questions from those people, and inshallah once we answer them, they will accept Islam, or things will be clarified.
Keeping and going with this theme, I'll direct a question to you, Brother Ali Rasul. What if someone said, but it's not fair? You know, what if a woman just wants to have one husband? Why doesn't she have that right? That's a tough question.
Yeah, if she wants to have only one husband.
Yeah.
Actually, she only does have one husband.
Yeah. No, maybe you
know.
meant why
Right.
women are not allowed to have 4 husbands.
Well, no, actually, the point is, what if she doesn't want to share?
Well, that becomes a problem. I mean, the society, as we know, is filled with a lot of problems because of envy and greed and jealousy, and these are diseases of the heart. I mean, if you look at the society as a whole, if there's a widow, her husband died, and she can't get married, nobody wants her, well, I mean, this is a problem. How are we going to solve this solution? You have another woman, she's become so old, you know, past the age that most people would want her. Who's going to marry her? She has children. Who's going to help her with the children?
And she has desires like any other human being.
Then there's a woman, she can't have children, so no one wants her. You know, so there's many situations that actually lead to corruption in society. For instance, you have a woman, she's been divorced. Okay, many men in this society here, they don't want a divorced woman. They think there's something wrong with her. She got divorced for some reason. She's old, you know, used, and so forth. So this woman now, she can't get married, but she has desires. Then you have the corrupt women who come to her trying to comfort her, and they wind up in a woman and woman relationship. You see? So she's vulnerable. But if we apply Islam, we protect ourselves from our own vulnerabilities. So Islam is a solution to all of the problems of the world, but people don't know how to apply it.
So when you describe it this way, actually then you get them to see that actually it is fair. You know, at the face value on the individual level, it seems like it's not fair. But when you understand it correctly, you see it's fair.
Holistically.
Yes.
Because sometimes, see, one of the key problems of the West is this individualism. Because of my right. They don't look at the society. So if they look at, okay, it is not right or it's not fair for that individual woman, what about other women? As you said.
So it's coming back to your point, the question is wrong.
Exactly.
We have to fix the question.
That is the point. And also, sometimes you say, okay, I might agree that this might displease certain individuals. But on the other side, we might gain a bigger interest for the whole society. So here we have a harm, a possible harm, and here we have a better result or a better gain. So how do you judge?
You would go with a better...
Of course. This is common sense.
Right.
By the way, I don't know whether we have time. Let me just mention something interesting. I'm not quite sure whether we can mention it on the screen. They say that women whom their husbands are married to more than one wife, they enjoy the sexual life more than women who are married to...
This is a study that should be published in every
No, it is
magazine.
true. It is true. Because they said that the husband, and by the way, yes, in the West, these are Western studies, that men who marry more than one wife, they live, I think, more by 15%. Why? Because it is natural that those men would take care of themselves more. This is one thing. The other thing, when the man is married to more than one, we are not promoting here multiple marriage, but
all of the husbands are calling their wives into the room right now to watch this.
But because you pinpoint this question, they say that the wife who is married to the other husband, she feels that whenever her husband comes to her, he is coming to something new. He's not feeling bored of her because he is tasting some other
the situation
and it shows that he wants her because he's leaving from one to come to her.
Exactly.
Well, we have about a minute left, so I think maybe this is not a polygamy show. It somehow turned into that. I don't know.
And
how
by
that
the way,
happened.
polygamy is not the correct.
It would be polygyny, right? Or
Yes.
polygamy.
No, multiple marriage. Yeah, because polygamy has a negative connotation.
So we'll move it. We have just like 1 minute, so let's move it from another
Okay.
topic. If you can list one more tough question that you have, and then you can give the answer very quick.
Okay. There are a lot. I wish we had more
We'll have
time.
another segment after this, inshallah.
Okay. The next question here that I'm usually confronted with, of course, they ask, why do our women have to cover their faces?
Yeah.
This is a question. Of course, we know how we should answer that, I believe.
Go ahead. How would you give the answer to that?
Yeah, I told some people, if you go to, in England, the most visited place is the post office. So I say, if you go to the post office and you see a fully naked woman, is that a decent thing? They say, of course not. Okay, what kind of level you would like to see as a decent image for a government agent? Well, she is wearing modestly. Now, how can you define modesty? Then we need to get into the problem that we agree that women have to cover more than men. Okay, because of course women have to cover their breast and the top side, and men not. So what is the level that you think it is acceptable? So the main difference is what? The level of covering, not the principle of covering, because you agree with us on the principle of covering.
Right.
And
in other words, where do you draw the line?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You draw it here, I draw it there.
Exactly.
Who's to
so
say?
why do you think that your line is the best line,
Right.
and you think that my line is the wrong line?
And what's your proof for your
Exactly.
claim?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back, so don't go anywhere. You're watching Let's Talk.
So this is an open invitation for everybody to recognize God and enjoy His blessings in this life and His mercy in this life and in the hereafter as well. Allah, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. Each name has a meaning. Each name signifies a nature of Allah the Almighty which no one shares or is compared to Allah in it.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back to Let's Talk. Today we're discussing answering tough questions, and I think at this point in this last segment of the show, we're going to turn it over to our audience, and you can ask our guest or Sheikh Haitham any questions that you have. Go ahead, brother.
I'm going to tell you the situation that happened to me. Once upon a time, my Christian colleague knows that I am not a sheikh. I am not know the whole interpretation of Quran. He stopped me and asked me in a tough way, what is the meaning of وَالْعَادِيَاتِ ضَبْحًا? I can't answer. But this question made me to read more in order not to be put in this situation again. I mean that a tough question make you to make useful use and
motivate you to learn more. Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah.
Do you have any comment on that?
Definitely. In general, this is why the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Talibul ilmi faridatun ala kulli Muslim." That is obligatory for every Muslim to study, to seek the knowledge, because with ignorance, the disbelievers and the shaitan and those who follow him, it makes you an easier prey. They can attack you better. So our defenses is in obeying Allah and His Messenger, which the Prophet ﷺ said, Talibul ilmi faridatun ala kulli Muslim. So it's obligatory on every Muslim. Then let's say you don't know. Okay, you're studying, but still you're confronted with questions that you don't know. What do you do then? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلِ ذِكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. So if you don't know, then you ask those who know, are scholars. That's why they're here. So it's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You study and you ask.
By the way, one quick comment on that. One of the ways that actually increased my iman was studying what non-Muslims said about Islam, like how they attacked it. almost within maybe 6 months of becoming Muslim, I came across anti-Islamic books and websites, and I just jumped right in. I don't suggest everyone do this. I think this was just something unique to me. But I just jumped right in, and because I was so convinced as someone who converted to Islam. And I knew the answer was somewhere. So I would see what they said, and I would take it to somebody or do some research until I had the answer. And after doing this for several years, really my iman was so high after doing that.
But we have to be careful. But as you say, that this is unique for you.
Yeah, this is not a fatwa.
I met some other people who became themselves confused because they debate with Christians or with atheists a lot. Yeah.
And I also have found many people, even they're sending me emails and things, maybe they see me here or through Facebook or something, they say, Astaghfirullah Azim, I used to be Muslim, but this atheist or this Christian asked me such and such question. Alhamdulillah, most of the time I can resolve the issues for them. But, this is a real danger. I'm not saying someone should do what I did, but I'm saying for me it was an interesting, unique case. Go ahead, brother.
As a matter of fact, I had this experience myself. When I was working in Marsa Matruh, one of the foreigners, he was unbeliever or non-believer. He asked me, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala choose Prophet Muhammad to be his prophet, although he is illiterate? He doesn't know how to read or write. Why? Why didn't he choose an educated person to be his prophet? Actually, I tried to discuss the matter with him, but I found that he was arguing, not discussing. He was arguing just to shake my will or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's again a fair point. And that's why we say you have to be careful. And this is one of the points that we mentioned. Try to know the motivation. He might just want to waste your time, or he might, as you said, make you confused.
Yeah, I had a similar experience too. I went on to a site, and of course I studied before I went on to the site, but I went on there and the guy was attacking me, using some very bad language. And I was calm. We have to show a good example of Islam even when we're being attacked. This is a very important point. And so he was telling me, I told him that the Quran does not support, violence. No, what we do is we defend, Islam. And if we're attacked, we defend it, but we're not the aggressor. And that Islam didn't spread by the sword. It was, spread, by the merchants and so forth, but it was defended by the sword, but it wasn't spread by the sword. Anyway, the guy told me, he said, what version of the Quran are you reading? He said, because this is a violent book. He said, you must be wearing shades or something. I said, I'm not wearing shades, but I said I probably need to because there's so much light coming out of the Quran.
It's very clever.
And sometimes, they are not reading the whole Quran. They are just reading some ayat that being quoted to them.
Right.
By the way, there is a point about Islam spread by the sword. Maybe we don't have to answer that. That is not an absolute correct answer, that Islam did not spread by sword.
Yeah, my angle is not that,
Yeah, I understand, but because we have wide range of audience, and this always people say Islam didn't spread by sword. Islam, there is no initiative, jihad. It is all defense your position. It's all defensive. That is not really the case, so we have to be careful.
When the Westerner says spread by the sword, what they mean is, they mean a Muslim comes up to a non-Muslim and he puts a sword to his neck and says, become Muslim or I'm going to kill you. Now this is, to my knowledge, not really historical.
And see, it doesn't work. And by the way, when people say this, we say, no. In fact, if you were to say this, Christianity spread by sword.
Now,
look at the Inquisition position in or what happened in Spain, the Inquisitions. What did they do? They used to kill people unless they confess that they are Christians or they were Christians.
See, in English, though, like he was saying, we know what they mean by that, so we have to be careful, because when they say spread by the sword, that means there's no talking. You either become Muslim or I'm killing you. But in Islam, we invite them to Islam first. Yeah.
Yeah, and also when we say as Muslims that armies went and conquered countries and stuff, they weren't doing it in order to force those people to become Muslim.
Exactly.
They
Yes.
were doing it because these governments were corrupt.
Exactly.
They were causing problems, and in the course of that, the subjects then
Right.
became Muslim
Right.
willingly. It wasn't
Exactly.
Yeah.
forced.
That's the point I was making too, is that these governments were dictatorships.
Right.
Islam went up against dictatorships to give the people the freedom to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Well, I think we should do 10 shows on this topic, but unfortunately that's all the time we have for today. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll see you next time, so be sure and watch us same time, same channel, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but do not ever quit. Success is a failure turned inside out. Let's talk and clear the clouds of doubt. Success is a failure turned inside out. Let's talk and clear the